Welcome to my humble little office. My name is R. Keith Andrews. I am a spiritual guide and paranormal adept. The journey continues today on April 11th, 2023 at approximately 4:19 p.m. PST. Now, I returned to this world for one primary purpose, and that is to remind people that working together, we can make this a better world for virtually everybody. Now, I bill myself as a spiritual guide because the tools I offer are the exact same tools I personally use in my day to day life. And the philosophies of life I talk about are the exact same philosophies I personally live by. So, this is not a question of here's a couple of ideas of what you might be able to do. Okay, these are tools that I've literally lived by. Well, I'm 59 years old now. Okay, and these philosophies have served me functionally well. And we have right off the bat coming through the door, we have Adam with the gold. Where are you off to today? Oh, there you go. So where are you off to today there, Adam? And Nathan, you come in with the silver. Welcome aboard. Today ought to be a little different for you. Well, it's always a little different. But let us see if we can get that funny little thing up here. That one. Nathan. Well, there we are. And we go copy. We come back down into here. And this, Nathan, is a link to your show. As a matter of fact, everybody coming in, this is linked to Nathan's show. Okay. Now, what do we got here? Yldrbac. Got to get that minimized so I can actually see. Yeah, I discovered some interesting things just 2 days ago now, I suspect. Okay. Well, I work on it there, Nathan. The reality is, with 8 billion people on this planet, a little more than 8 billion, there are lots of people to go around. It's not like we're in technically competition. I mean, number one, you run in the quantum realm, I run from one end of the gamut to the other, and I've yet to figure out how to focus it. But I figure, what the heck? We might just as well get started, see if we can get an idea running. Well, I came across some interesting information, and let's hope that I've got the other side of this. Where is Races of the World? It's right there. Go all the way back up. Well, do it the easy way and drag it all the way back up. Theta, the collecting. There we are. Oh, yes. We've even got technology from Atlantis sorted out. I've got another piece of it here. I just have to figure out how to phrase it properly. What do we got? I open that up and I'm running into troubles. And Philip, you are in with the bronze. I don't think I've seen you in a while. Welcome back. Hope things have been going reasonably well for you. And Shadow, you are in. Shadow and Sun, you are in with the honorable mention. And this brings up this little field again. And here is Shadow and Sun. And here's the link to go and check out his YouTube channel. Really a lot of fun with some of the stuff he works with. Tell you, in all fairness, like, I've got a creative side. I realize that, I accept this. That being, my creative side boils down to writing. Okay, 5 different genres of writing, but writing nonetheless. What Shadow and Sun do goes far and beyond the writing side of it. Hey, Alicia, how you doing? Glad you could join us. Oh, yeah, of course your Wi-Fi is lagging. I swear that is quite... I was about to ask if there's any way of getting a booster out there, but I'm certain you know more about that than I do. Okay, hopefully it comes through well enough for you. And again, people, if you've got a question, and regardless of if it's in the same topic of what we're discussing, please do me a favor and put it in all caps so I can find it. Way too often people put a question in and then I end up missing it because of that side of it. Yeah, Shadow, I really appreciate that. The other day I was told I was not only rude but uncivilized. I think that had something to do with the fact I warned a guy that if he pushed the wrong button too hard, I was going to hang up on him. He pushed too hard. But you might be right. I've spent my life striving. Now, what, pray tell, is that? I've got a double streak right down the middle of my monitor, and I have no idea why. Oh, probably from the light up above. Henry, how you doing? Glad you could join us. Hopefully your day's been going well. What do we got? Uh-oh. That can be a real disconcerting maneuver for the bride to be. But unfortunately, I've heard of it happening. Okay. Dating apps, the one thing you got to remember here, Philip, where it comes to dating apps, number one, all they do is open the door. You still have to be just as cautious, if not more so. Okay. And I will tell you, long distance dating, does it work? Yes, but it's got its, well, that's unfortunate. I warned my other half. She dies on me before we get married, I'm not marrying her. And like I told her, if I die first, I'd recommend not marrying me. But the thing with dating that everybody, and I suspect I should look at that down the road. That's stuff I'm working on. So where is my pen? Of course I don't have a pen here. It's only an office. Why would I possibly have a pen handy? Fortunately, they're not very far away. However, I will be moving my office into the back soon, primarily because I have no functional option. Where are we here? Hey, Bones, how you doing? Glad you could join us. The important thing here, Bones, is as long as you're enjoying them, this is imperative. This is the important part from my standpoint. And the reason for that is, yes, I'm looking at the subscribers. We are sitting at 480. I am aiming for, I am hoping to hit 1,000 before the end of the year. Yeah, Adam, there's a real simple one. And I'll get back to the dating apps in a second. Boy, we can see where this is going to go. Anyway, what you do is grab yourself some tea. And this is literally the same remedy I personally use. Okay, so this is not just a question of, here's something I've heard. This is one I use and it gets to my system. Okay, take a cup of tea. You add about a teaspoon of honey. Okay, let me just think this through. You add about a quarter teaspoon of ginger and a little bit of lemon juice. Okay, of real lemon juice. Now, lemon juice, you can get real squeezed lemon. You can get those little yellow bottles, or you can get the big green bottle that says real lemon. Okay, I've used all three. Okay, so this is something that does work. And then, of course, you just drink it like normal tea. It is best to drink it warm. Okay, but that's the remedy I use when it comes to a sore throat. The way it was described to me is it's a poor man's neocitrin. But the reality of it, from my standpoint, is you don't get all the extra toxins. That's just my personal outlook on it. Yeah, and I'm just going back up here. What have we got here? Yeah, there's no problem there, Philip. My other half happens to live way down south of the border, and we still haven't met face to face. You know, but do dating apps work? The answer is yes, but you have to be cautious. Make absolutely certain you're aware of what your boundaries are, that you're very clear with what you're aiming at. Okay, my other half, when I first met her, I literally told her I was looking down the road. Once we get to know each other, once everything comes into balance, I was looking at marriage. I was not looking at a long distance play by play, as it were. Okay, so come right out and let them know. Okay, I recommend you don't start off with going, "Gee, I'm madly in love with you, and I want to get married and have kids and raise a family." This is probably going a little overboard. Okay, yeah, I thought you might. Well, that's just it, Alicia. From my standpoint, if I didn't get lost so easy, I'd probably do the same thing. But I can get lost getting out of my house. So I'm thinking this isn't a good place for me. But absolutely, go where you're comfortable. Okay. Now, no, in all fairness, Adam, the type of tea does not matter. Okay, if you like green tea, black tea, chamomile, it doesn't make any difference. The issue is hot tea, because what's doing the work is the honey. Oh, by the way, the honey get unpasteurized. Okay, unpasteurized honey, and the unpasteurized honey and the ginger is what's going to do the job for you. Okay, but no, the actual type of tea is not a relevant concern. Yeah, that's not going to work well. But in all fairness, that should help you. The way I find it is if you're utilizing it, if you're utilizing it right before bed as you're winding down, it's a little easier. But use it when you will. I've had it at all times of the day. Oh, chamomile tea is not. Oh well, that's depressing. Um, Adam, you're up in Edmonton, are you not? Or between Calgary and Edmonton most of the time. Okay. If you've got, I know that Shoppers Drug Mart down here in BC, I don't know if you have one, but I know they carry it because I bought it from them before. And virtually any store, chamomile is a pretty common one, so you shouldn't have too much trouble tracking it down. Oh, there you go. I used to read out in, very, very, very big bees. You just have to check the label there, Philip. But it boils down. What unpasteurized really means is they haven't boiled the daylights out of it to start with, which is probably a good thing because when they boil it, they take all the important nutrients out. And by the way, if you ever see a bee that is actually, or a cow that's producing honey, you have yourself, at least they won't sting you. A cow-sized bee will not sting you. Okay, it will impale you, and the poison won't matter. But I mean, think of it this way: if you've got a bee that size, you can fly the cow to market. Oh, I should show you this just because I've got it here, and I just picked this up the other day. Wonder if I've got them. Not that. Wings came off. Oh, right there. Now, I don't have the wings attached to this thing yet. Okay, because I only just picked it up yesterday. Here is a normal sized man. Okay. Now, here is a hornet from hell. Also known as a bee the size of a cow. And yes, I will get to painting it. It does. I've got wings for it. I just haven't attached them yet. But where are we here? That's not bad. So what do we got? Well, Well, in all fairness, Coke isn't really like soda pop itself, or pop as we call it, soda as you call it, isn't really good for anybody. But I figure I've already been dead. I've already been clinically dead, as in doctors restarted me 4 times, another 5 somebody else helped with it, and a 10th time that we're not entirely certain if I died or not. Okay, that one seems to be a little up in the air. But that being said, I've already died enough times. I'm living on stolen time anyway. Besides that, I already told my son if I up and die, I don't care if he buries me. Put me out in the backyard. I don't care. Mind you, I'm in downtown, so, I'm in the heart of a city. This may be a bad idea to leave a body lying around. Yeah, I don't drink myself. I don't drink a lot of tea. I just didn't, I was out today. So I ended up having 3 or 4 coffee while I was out. And I'm frankly just a little too warm to bother with coffee or tea right about now. And that's what I'm going over here for. Now we definitely, as you can tell, like we all know. Okay. Yeah, no doubt. Nicely timed there, Alicia. The reality is synchronicities do happen. Coincidences, like many of you, I'm not so fond of. Okay. But one of the big things that I'm looking at, and this is why I say here's the topic we're going to look at, but who knows where it's going to go. Okay. Health-wise, I'm still, and I was supposed to come on, but I'll deal with that later. I'm still working out a couple of things in my own head, but no, just briefly, and then we're going to get on with Atlantis, and the whole 9 yards there, because I've got some really neat news I only just came across while I was going through that pile of information I've got behind me. Well, behind me, it's over there, right about there. Okay, that's all information on off-worlders I'm in the process of translating. Okay, but the one thing I will just go back and reiterate where it comes to dating apps. Dating apps are the new method of finding people. But don't kid yourself. Okay, number one, you still have to be cautious. As a matter of fact, you have to be a lot more cautious in many cases. In many cases than you did when you were face to face. Make certain, one of the biggest things I will ask, that I will suggest, okay, I will get to that question in just half a minute there, Henry. One of the biggest things that you have to look at where it comes to dating, arrange for a visual contact, some form of visual. If they turn you down, that's a red light right off the bat. Okay, because I will tell you, the one common denominator with many of the dating apps is people will tell you all sorts of things, and unfortunately, many of them don't actually follow through with what they're saying. They paint a great picture, but when you don't have a visual, okay, and I'm not talking about anything exotic, anything erotic. I mean a live video so you can see what their face looks like. Okay, so you've got some sort of connection. If they refuse, okay, you may have a red light situation here. Okay, so be cautious. Now, popping down here, Henry, you asked, is it possible for plastic to enter a genome and incorporate itself? The answer is no. Okay, plastic itself is not a living organism. Okay, now that being said, it boils down to a corporeal form can digest plastic or break it down. Not well, so let's not go eating balloons. This is a bad idea. Okay, plastic itself will not do a thing of its own accord. It will break down. Okay, and it can be dissolved relatively easily. Okay, but will it enter a genome and incorporate itself? No. Okay. Philip, you're absolutely right. It is to make certain it is not a con. A con. Okay. I made the mistake years ago of talking to somebody and I wasn't paying attention. I was talking to them, thought I was dealing with a woman. Okay. Then one day she made the mistake of hitting the camera when we were talking. She was always telling me, again, she was always telling me that she couldn't get her video to work. And one day she accidentally, it's the only way I can see it, hit the camera and I got to see her. Huge man, big red, full beard mustache. For some bizarre reason, I cut the contact immediately. But this is why I say, ask for a video connection as soon as you can arrange it. The sooner the better. There is no point in dragging it out. Okay. That's just terrible, Nathan. I'll tell you, if it takes my saying don't eat it, hey, more power to you. But I will tell you, balloons are a really bad idea. Okay, plastic of any form is, which really begs the question on some of the food that's out there. I've seen people come up with some pretty stupid ideas on occasion. And I don't fault the people coming up with stupid ideas, but I do question the intelligence of the people that follow the stupid ideas. Just looking at what you wrote here, Alicia. Alicia's gone. Good advice. I just listened to my body and intuition. It told me that too. Hot is very soothing and heals sore throats, etc. Luckily, my sister's has been, so I get the real deal straight from the source. Well, that I will grant you there, Shadow. Some animals will. I mean, if you think about it, margarine is only apparently one molecule off of oil, and rats won't touch the stuff. Okay, so if you want to protect your gear, that would be a bad thing. So let's not finish that thought. Okay. Oh yeah, this is why I say there is no limit to what can be going on. Okay, but can a form or can an entity eat plastic and absorb it and digest it? The answer is yes. But will said plastic insert itself in? No. Phil's just added here. My autistic dating guide suggests looking for local volunteer work. Made me think of one set of grandparents. They were both working in a hospital. That's where they met. And the reality is you can meet people just about anywhere. Okay. My other half I met online, not on a dating site, but the one, the reality is dating sites do work. You just have to be cautious. Now, before we go any further, considering we were going to look at this, I'm going to sort of push the door open and see what happens. Okay. There, do I remember living on Atlantis? The answer is yes. Call it what you will. Okay. Now I need to pull up a piece of information because I was doing a bunch of document today. Is that the one? Yep. That won't help anyway. Okay, now Atlantis itself. Yeah, I forget exactly how many years ago. It's around here. So it's in my notes somewhere. Okay. But sometimes I get my time frames a little screwy. Okay, what do we got? Let's minimize that. Yeah, no, Philip, dating a Borg is usually a bad idea. They're a little bit shy on the emotional database side of things. Besides that, they don't try and they don't tend to fall in love. They tend to create a bigger problem. Now, what do we go here? What do we got? Okay. Yeah, 7 of 9. She was a Borg. Everybody has a history. Okay, they really do. Some of them are a little more screwy than others. But thank you there, Nathan. I appreciate that. Okay. I wonder if that'll actually tell me. Just because I'm curious. Just checking something up here because my memory is not always as good as I'd like it to be. Where are we here? Nope, don't need that. There we are. Okay. Yeah, not quite 60. According to the net here, Atlantis was about 9,000 years before Plato. Let us see here. One of the neat things I finally figured out how to get the computer to do is pull up information. There we go. So okay, I was thinking that. Okay, Atlantis, we're looking at approximately 10,000 BC. Now, with that in mind, let's minimize that. Okay, and we're going to bring that back up so I can see what's going on. There we are. Okay. Yeah, Atlantis was roughly 10,000 years ago. Now, the thing is, Atlantis was a thriving metropolis. The thing we got to realize is that the main hub, the main city itself, yes, from everything I recall, was set up at where you see the Bimini Islands. Okay, the wreckage in the Bimini Islands that everybody talks about Atlantis sinking. Okay. A lot of the information that is put there is a little bit complicated, if you will. And time can be a real screwy thing, especially when you think of the number of times that mankind has changed calendars. Okay. I believe so, but in all honesty, Philip, I'm not entirely certain where Bimini is at this point. I do know that it was somewhere close to the entrance to the Mediterranean Sea. Okay. The thing about that city was it was way more advanced than you might think. Okay. Now people talk about Atlantis crashing into the sea. Okay, and I'm here to tell you, and I've got people that I know that were on Atlantis at the time. Okay, that have corroborated the same memories I've got. Now, let's start with the overall issue. Okay, and by the way, am I including the Atlanteans in Volume 2? The answer is yes. Okay, I'm already in the process of adding them. Okay. Now, just looking at this. Okay. Now, the Atlanteans, we call them the Atlanteans because that's what was recognized at the time, and had more to do with what was written on the wall than had to do with the people themselves. Okay. And I do mean that quite literally. Not to worry, people, this is what's called slow suicide using coke. No, I'm not suicidal. Annoyed with the world, but suicidal not. Okay, now Atlanteans looked very well, still do look very human. Okay, fantastic artwork. Okay, absolutely brilliant architects. Now I'm looking at this, and what do we got here? Well, sad to say there, Alicia, but sometimes it is too late to do the right thing. If you die, you're going to have a pain in the neck problem trying to do the right thing. At that point, too late. If you're striving to get something done by the time you're 20 and you're now 21, too late to do it by the time you're 20, but not too late to accomplish it. Okay. And that's the whole thing there, Philip. You know, plastic is usable. It does have function. Most of what mankind has built has some functional use. Just mankind keeps twisting it around. But the Atlanteans were extremely creative, and they were absolutely perfectionistic where it came to their artwork, where it came to the building lines of their homes. They were absolutely insistent on proper geometric alignment. Okay. I'm just looking here. Hey YJ, how you doing? Glad you could join us. Oh, Atlantis wasn't a singular city. This is the neat part about it. I'm just talking about the primary one. There were a number of satellite communities, and we'll get to what happened to those afterward, a little later in the show. I'm referring to the capital city, if you will. Okay, but here's the thing. Atlanteans themselves, they were called Atlanteans by humans because when they arrived, they met the humans. They interacted with the humans quite nicely. Matter of fact, they got along famously to start with. Okay, from my standpoint, well, that was cute. From my standpoint, we have a simple issue. Atlantis started off, it was there for quite a number of years. Well, quite a number of centuries, really. Okay. It started off as one city, and then because they were planning on staying put, they were planning on staying here. And we don't call it colonizing, simply, more to the point, they weren't trying to replace. Okay. See, one of the what do we got? There are like Atlantis itself. The primary city was in Bimini. It was off the coast there on the Bimini site. They did have a site. They had a site in, now bear in mind, okay, and they were very careful on how they did this, but the Atlanteans had satellite cities, had satellite communities, if you will, on just about every continent. Okay, they were all throughout Europe and the Western and the West Africa. Okay, they had a city over in North America. Okay, they actually had two that I'm aware of. One was way up, bad choice, really bad choice, way up past where Prince Rupert now sits. Okay, the other one they had way down, also not a real brilliant idea. See, the thing is, they were trying out all the different locations that were not heavily occupied by man once they got seated. Okay, and they developed some absolutely brilliant communication techniques. Okay. The nice little part about it from everybody's standpoint is the Atlanteans, yes, they arrived. When they got here, now what, pray tell, is Prince Rupert in timeout for? See, the thing is, Sahara used to be a forest. Like that long ago, 10,000 years ago, the Sahara was not the Great Sahara Desert. It was the Great Sahara Forest, and it was a full blown rainforest. Okay, but when the Atlanteans arrived and made contact, they had been they had been in transit for quite literally for centuries. Okay, this was a generation ship. Okay, they enhanced their travel time immensely while on Earth. Okay, but here's the thing. They settled in, they made contact with humans. Yes, there was some interaction. There was some, marriage between them, if you want to call it marriage. So I mean, we are talking about marriages came to be, or people chose partners. Some Atlanteans chose partners with some of the locals. Okay. Now, the thing you got to remember is Atlanteans were, they were varied in color just like humans are, but they looked almost identical. There was one critical factor. Okay. One critical factor about Atlanteans that humans didn't have. Mind you, you couldn't tell. Okay. At least not by looking at them. Nathan, I don't think anybody knows what to make of you, but then take that as a compliment. Okay. The Atlanteans had one thing about them that humans could not see. Okay. And that is the fact that they had a third lung. Okay. That third lung was what they used to filter a lot of things, which meant they could breathe a lot more. They had stamina that was just absolutely bizarre. Now, I don't think you'll ever see anything. You see something that absolutely looks like it, not given 10,000 years of growth. Okay, because let's face it, we're standing out of the ground, but you also got to remember that much of the technology they had was designed to make certain that it blended in. Okay, but these guys had some phenomenal architecture. If you find something up there, that'd be great. I will tell you, and I'm just thinking, I was going to go, no, it won't be there. you know, hey D-Worm, how you doing? Glad you could join us. You know, I mean, people have been looking for Atlantis for centuries. The funny part about Atlantis is Atlantis never sank. Okay. And yeah, I realize what all the stories tell you. And no, I have not researched any of it. I simply remember being there when it had the problem. Now, the Atlantean people were very fashion oriented, very much into the creative side, almost to the same level that the Venusians were, but with a much higher scientifically intellectual approach to it. You know, now the neat part about it, when you take a look at the Atlantean culture, when they arrived, okay, number one, let's start with the obvious issue. These people were not here to conquer. They were not violent in any functional sense of the matter. But things got a little bit, things got a little complicated when the locals decided they wanted the technology for themselves. And the Atlanteans went, you guys are not mature enough to handle this stuff. Okay. And, there was a major conflict that arose from that. But the Atlanteans were not interested in modifying the way humans were growing. They were interested in setting up shop. They'd been on the go. Like I said, they'd been in the ships for literally, in human terms, literally centuries. But we are talking a generation ship, meaning designed for long time travel. Okay, a whole lot longer time than what mankind is considered. Like when you look at the series, the Star Trek series. Okay, they talk about a 5-year plan. 5 years is a blink in the eye of what the Atlanteans were up to. Okay, it would have been more along the lines of what what Voyager did. No, it's not a question of being slow shipping. It's a question of being a very, very long distance before the OTE drive was designed. As a matter of fact, you can safely point the answer at the Atlanteans regarding the development of the OTE drive, of the oscillator densification of tri-transformational equipolarity. That particular piece of technology was developed while Atlantis was seated on Earth. What do we got here? I won't argue with what people are known about. The reality is, YJ, that from my standpoint, okay, as I haven't done any of the research, I cannot corroborate nor can I deny that kind of outlook. You have a great night there, Alicia. When the Atlanteans got here, they were here with the intention, because they've been on the road for way too long. They just said, scrap it, we're going to settle in and be done. Okay, but they wouldn't turn over because mankind at that point was still very aggressive. And if you haven't noticed, they're still rather on the aggressive side. Okay, but the Atlanteans said, no, we're not doing that. We're not giving you the combat advantage. Okay, well, as you can well imagine, some Atlanteans did not agree with the leadership and decided that the locals should have access to the weapons. Okay, and therefore tried setting it up. Okay, well, the long and the short of it, the Atlanteans, because you got to remember, Atlanteans first and foremost were extremely loyal to each other. So once you had a commitment in a relationship, okay, didn't matter who it was with. Once you had a commitment, that's where your focus was. Okay. But many of the if you will, the serfs, the commoners, decided that no, these people are really nice. They want a hand. Let's give them a hand. We've met these people. We've gotten used to who they are. In a lot of ways, yes. Okay. And there's a few other neat little bonuses there, YJ. Okay, because when the locals, coupled with a number of the Atlantean serfs, okay, yeah, Philip's going, I don't like how I feel when I'm in my grumpy side. High blood pressure, high blood pressure is a royal pain. Do you ever find when your blood pressure goes high, you also end up really dizzy? Okay. I mean, and I agree with you. I've had blood pressure problems myself. My dad had it down to a fine art. He'd change it while he was hooked up. But no, when the locals, when there was a combined approach, there was an attempt. Well, it was successful. There was one scientist working in the basement that I happen to know. Okay, and I'd gone down at the time. I was actually working up in the control room. Okay, I was literally up in the control room where we governed all the power flow on that side of things. Okay, but when I had time, I'd go downstairs and down into the basement. There was one scientist working on a neat little piece of equipment that was supposed to be designed to create an energy field around the entire city, like a dome over the entire city, to lock in air. Because when that started getting developed, people have been pushing really hard. Okay, both the locals and some of the Atlanteans have been pushing really hard to get the military to get the Atlantean government to say, okay, we're going to give you some combat tools. We're going to give you some advanced technology. They weren't making headway. So this gentleman, this one scientist, was working on a power generator to create a solid force field to trap oxygen inside the city, because they were planning on leaving again. They decided it was way too hostile, that the locals, as inhumans, were way too combative, and they didn't desire to participate in that anymore. Well, they ended up, the locals and if you will, the rebels decided that they were going to stop Atlantis from leaving. So they sabotaged the drive. Okay, they sabotaged the energy battery. And what you ended up with, we'll take it this way. Okay. Atlantis was sitting flat, obviously. And yes, the Tales of the Spires were absolutely on the money. Had to do with the idea that the taller the tower, the easier the communication lines between the towers and at further distance. And yes, they did build other booster systems, other booster pods to be able to relay to the other cities. Okay. But when the system blew, the ship did not sink. Okay, it literally tilted and shot to orbit. Now, as you can well imagine, given that we had pyres and we had walkways between the pyres, okay, and people were on these walkways when all of a sudden the ship tilted and launched. Okay, this was an uncontrolled launch. Now, I talked to the gentleman. I know the gentleman this lifetime that built it. Okay. And he'd lived multiple lifetimes worrying about the eternity. How are you? Glad you could join us. He had lived centuries, quite literally, thinking he had wiped out Atlantis. Okay. And with that in mind, the first time I met him, we cleared things up. He's like, no, you didn't destroy it. There were a lot of people died. The only reason I survived the Exodus was because a half a dozen of my friends of my coworkers, friends, hit the wall before I did. I had 5 or 6 bodies cushioning my impact into the wall. I'll tell you, that is not a feeling I'm going to forget. Ultimately, they saved my life by hitting the wall before I did. Okay. Yeah. That is one, like I said before, Mr. L. From my standpoint, it's a pretty cut and dried issue. I don't tell people who, I do not reveal that side of things for people. That's up to somebody else. Okay. That being said, if somebody comes out with the information, unless I've gotten direct go ahead from the individual involved, I'm not going to corroborate it either, just so we're clear. But the ship tilted and launched into orbit, and frankly, for the longest time, sat there. Okay, because he managed to get the bubble working just enough to trap the oxygen, but he couldn't get the engine up and running at the same time. That took quite a number of years before that was finally sorted out. Okay. Well, the nice part about thinking you were there is it's great to think whatever. Okay, you always look for something to corroborate, somebody else to corroborate it. It was funny when myself and this individual were talking about it, and he's like, you couldn't have known that if you weren't on the ship. I said, well, this is true. But the thing is, people will continue looking for Atlantis just like they're going to continue looking for the Garden of Eden. You got to start looking to the stars. Okay. Now, there's something you don't get to have often, But let's understand something, guys. The fact that individuals remember past lives does not mean they are now alien. It simply means their memory of a past life is solid. Okay. That's just the way life works on that one. Now, when the ship launched, okay, when it ended up in orbit, he managed to get the equipment working well enough that it created an oxygen bubble, but it left a staggering number of Atlanteans behind. And that's where things got really screwy. Okay, because the Atlanteans went 2 different directions in the way of evolution. Okay, and that's always fun. I got the first piece of information yesterday. I'm just getting told today where that extra piece came from, or where it went to, is more to the point. When Atlantis launched, it left the people that were involved in creating the sabotage, by the way, did not survive. Something to do with the engines firing off all over the dock they were standing on. Okay, and the way that the city was laid out, that the locals lived in, when the exhaust hit, okay, it created a shockwave all the way down Main Street. I can just imagine. I wasn't on the ground, so I don't know entirely what is. I'm not entirely certain what all happened. Okay, but I'll tell you, the calculations we made while we were in orbit did kind of indicate that the devastation down below must have been extreme. Okay, so Atlantis ended up in orbit. But while it did that, all of the satellite cities that were there were all of a sudden left stranded. Okay. All of a sudden you have these little pocket communities, and you're only looking at 10, 15,000 people in each pocket community. Okay, over time. So when you're looking at that, okay, understand all of a sudden the main hub, the main data transfer, all of a sudden gets yanked out. Every city, every satellite city that was built, okay, and if I recall, I think there may have been 6. Should have been 6. Okay. I just don't know. I haven't searched my memories to piece together exactly where they were. Okay, but I can tell you this. We figured that the devastation on the ground level had to be extreme. Okay. Now, Atlanteans they were very proud of their creative side. Like I said, very much in the same line as the Venusians, with the big difference that Atlanteans did not have a problem knowing how to fight. Venusians had to set up a contract or a treaty, if you will, with the Martokians to defend them. Okay, in the event of a problem. Now, once Atlantis hit orbit, then we got to settle things down and start working on getting help. Okay. Trying to get help to get home. Because let's face it, we are, at that point, we were so far off the beaten path of what we were used to that we had to call for help. Okay. Now, I'm going to have to a little bit of poking around. Okay, because some of the names are a little I'm pulling up questions as to whether I've got the name right, but I happen to know another individual that was actually connected to the ship that came to help the Atlanteans. Okay, to get them to go home. Okay. Did the Atlanteans eventually go home? The answer is yes. They sat in orbit for a very long time. And yes, from ground, because of the size of the ship, you could see it periodically if you knew what you were looking for. But they had some remarkable technology to make it hard to see. Okay. Eventually, it did take off and go home. However, and this is why I said things got a little screwy. Okay. The Atlanteans were brilliant and they were absolutely brilliantly creative. Okay. But when they got left alone, when they all of a sudden found themselves on their own and out of contact, different communities developed different things. Okay. And up in Northern Europe and the British Isles, there was one small contingent there. It was really I just about called it an outhouse, but it was really just an outlying community, just a small thing. But the people that were there became the teachers that developed the druids. Okay, that developed that side of the spiritual side of things. Okay, they ended up developing a lot of that spiritual belief and that connection. How you doing, Raven? Glad you could join us. So the Atlanteans did help communicate or did help train many of the locals in the natural ways of energy. Okay. And that said, this is why, with the Atlanteans being very what humans call psychically enhanced, okay, druids were able to do things that mankind couldn't really piece together. Okay, they just weren't they were not equipped to deal with it at that time. When you think about it, that's the one group, and they're the ones that, yes, and by the way, no, the Atlanteans were not the ones that built Stonehenge. Okay, the Druids didn't build it either. The Druids simply utilized it. Okay, so I mean, when you're looking at that side of it, mankind did get some guidance from them in the spiritual way of communicating with Earth, of taking into consideration where the ley lines were, how they can affect communication, and for that matter, travel. Okay, it was there was a very definitive interaction there, but most of that took place after the primary city evacuated. Now here's the real kicker to it. Okay, and I just want to make sure I've got the name right here. Let me just pull that back up. There we are. Okay. The reason that they were referred to as Atlanteans at all, okay, the Atlanteans are actually, number one, Amadai. Oh, wait a minute. That's up top, I think. Is it not? No, it is not. I have not translated that yet. No, I have not translated that yet. Somewhere in my notes here, I've got the actual name of the Atlanteans, and I'll get that to you when I can. But I will tell you this. The reason that they were referred to as Atlanteans is because when they first made contact, okay, the local language was not entirely comprehended. Okay, obviously the Atlanteans did not exactly speak human. Okay, they didn't speak the local language at the time. Okay, so Kimberly, how you doing? Glad you could join us. So when the locals said, "Where did you come from?" the answer to it was Atlantia. Well, Atlantia wasn't the name of their world. Atlantia was the name of their ship that they showed up in. Okay, and net result, they ended up being referred to as Atlanteans. Okay, and no, before anybody asks, I do not actually have a schematic for their ship. I do have an understanding of the star drive they were using. Okay, but when the sabotage occurred, okay, many of the Atlanteans were left behind. The funny part about it, and I'll use the term funny really, really loosely, we lost a lot of really good people that day. Okay, because let's face it, you take a walkway, even with a railing, and all of a sudden you flip the walkway up like this, and then leave. The people that are on the walkway didn't stand much of a prayer. Some of them landed in the water. Most of them bounced off the wall, and that was the end of the story. Okay, but the one group of Atlanteans that were in northwestern Europe, okay, ended up connecting, because they were just a small group, connected with some of the locals and taught the locals how to talk to the planet. Okay, this was just something that the Atlanteans already understood. Net result, we have the evolution, or the beginning of the evolution, if you will, of the pagan religions, of the way of making connections with the planet in order to avoid added complications. Now, that's only part of the story. Okay, hopefully you guys are able to follow this. And yes, there are going to be those of you that are going to, somebody's going to go, you're just making this up as you go along. And frankly, I'm used to that. Okay, I still find it fascinating the number of people in the UFO community alone that I know of that claim to believe in UFOs and then question everything to the point of being derogatory, which, from my standpoint, and I can safely say the people in this room do not fall into that category. Well, YJ, you're absolutely right. The Atlanteans were not human. Okay, they were Atlantean. They did not come from Earth. They did not evolve on Earth. Okay, they simply came to, they simply came to Earth. Basically, it boiled down to is they've been wandering way too long and decided that they were going to settle away from, as much they were going to expand away from local civilization. Yes, the primary ship did land close by and did reach out to meet people, but the Atlanteans had no interest in conquest. They had no interest in supplantation. Okay, and I don't even know if that's a word, but we'll make it up. In any event, okay, they ended up making connection. They did end up having relationships and developing families with humans. Net result, you end up with what humans would call a natural hybrid, or a half-breed, if you will. Okay, now some of the Atlanteans went on in northwestern Europe to teach humans about about humans' connection to Earth. Okay, and bear in mind the Atlanteans had already been here for centuries before this whole accident, before this whole sabotage took place. Okay, they had managed to keep this incredible spired city essentially under lock and key. But somewhere along the line, some of the people that had come, not the ones that had landed originally, this whole sabotage thing started off because some of the younger generation did not like the idea that it was deemed unsafe to turn over advanced technology to people that did not have the intellectual capacity to handle it properly. Okay, net result, we have this rebellion, as it were. Well, I will tell you, the people involved in the rebellion didn't live long enough to enjoy the short victory. Okay, but here's where things get a little screwy. Okay, so before I get into that, though, I'm going to ask you two things. One, is this making viable sense to you guys? Okay, if not, absolutely. If you've got questions, absolutely drop them into the chat room. I've only got the one chat room, which happens to be on YouTube. Okay, because I don't know how to set up the rest of it yet. Okay, but if you've got questions, absolutely ask. Okay, now before I go any further, I'm going to put this out to you. Okay, if you do like the stream, if you're enjoying the stream, absolutely do me a favor and give us a thumbs up, and do subscribe to the channel and share the daylights out of it. The nice part about it, when the Atlanteans that were left behind had no option but to abandon their cities and start to make their way to connect with other people for the most part. But there was an offshoot, and it ended up taking place, if I recall correctly, from what I've come to gather, because we had communication for a short period with the communities left behind. Okay, but up in not in North Africa, guess to be Northwest Africa. Okay, all along that coast. Okay, some of the Atlanteans ended up moving closer and closer to the water. Okay, and quite frankly, eventually, some of them ended up in the water. Now, the piece of information I only just got a couple of days ago was the link between the Whalan, okay, which, by the way, correction, not the Whalan, the Whelan. Okay, these are your merfolk. Okay, what you would consider mermen and mermaids. Okay, and for that matter, sirens. Okay, remember that thing about Atlanteans being very into the creative side of things? Okay, the Atlanteans in time, their descendants went back to the water. Like I said, Atlanteans themselves have a third lung. No, in all fairness, YJ, I really haven't. Okay, but then again, instead of having normal problems, I get computer problems that come from Hades or other places. I don't actually do a lot of research to go and look at much. And yes, I realize that makes me a terrible researcher. Okay, like what happens sometimes is people will send me a video and go, "This is a video of such and such," and for whatever reason, I can't get the thing to play. Okay, I was on the show the other day with Kimberly, I think, a couple of weeks back, and she sent I think it's Kimberly, but I might be mistaken, but the rabbit hole anyway. I was sent a link. My computer wouldn't open the link. This is normal occurrence for me. Okay, but no, the Atlanteans, their descendants, became the Whelan, okay, which are what you would know as mermen, mermaids, sirens. Okay. So from that standpoint, this is the part that just blew me away. I'm like, okay, there's usually a link somewhere along the line. The last thing I was expecting was to find out that the Whelan were actually connected directly to the Atlanteans. Okay, but and I had assumed, and apparently erroneously, that the Whelan were simply another offshoot of humans. That wasn't the case. The reality of it is, yes, they were half human, absolutely, which I guess does put that link in place. Okay, but when you start looking at that, now you've got this incredibly advanced society that was on the surface. It collapses. The stuff got, the city was torn apart. Okay, this is why you can't find remains of it. It's because it was salvaged. And whatever they could send, whatever the locals salvage, they took. Okay. And over time, a lot of it just came apart. Okay, it was just, it was time decay, whatever you want to call it. So, people can keep looking for the Atlanteans. They can keep looking around the world for where it is, for the lost city. Well, the lost city, you're not finding. Okay, at least not until you get off this world. Okay, and right now people are still having trouble with that. Okay, oddly enough, they're not having as much trouble getting off the world as you might think. But they are certainly having trouble cooperating while they're doing it. Well, it does, except for the thing. I don't know if they had anybody named Jennings. Let me just make sure I did that right. Because I just got it transferred over. There we are. Let's not do that. There we go. There you go. What do we got? Yeah, the neat part. Oh, I will do my best to take a look at that after the show there, Nathan. Okay. The reason being I've got way too many emails floating around right now that I've got to go through. But like I mentioned earlier, many of the races that I've got, and many of the names I've got in Races of the World were identifiers. Now what I've done is gone back to find out what the actual names were. But the Atlanteans, okay, swift like a brick. Been trying to piece that together. This is what happens when I get my head started around. This is who your Atlanteans were. Okay. Oh, he absolutely was. I loved listening to Waylon Jennings. Now, that's one of the few people I can actually remember the name of. Do not ask me what songs he wrote. Okay. That one I can't do. At least not at present. Maybe in time. But when you take a look at the Atlantean people, they were a very peaceful people. They were more interested. The Atlantean people were much more interested in peaceful coexistence. Okay. I swear they took part of their training from the Mobians, only I don't know if they ever had real solid contact with the Mobians. Okay. But they were much more, the Alterans, like I said, the Atlanteans, were much more interested in a mutually beneficial connection. Unfortunately, the Terrans at the time, the humans at the time, were more interested in having the advanced technologies to take out their own adversaries instead of learning how to communicate. Okay, so you've got many things that changed on this world with the arrival of the Atlanteans, but understand that changed because the Atlanteans decided to mesh with mankind, not conquer. They decided to try and find a way to coexist. And since their way of life had come to a grinding halt, gee, now that brings back a whole lot of memories there, YJ. I used to and the way I look at it, Johnny Cash was the first true rapper. Okay. And most people don't see him as a rapper, but let's face it, he spoke to music. And that's essentially what a rapper does. Okay. But the Atlanteans, are they going to eventually come back? The answer would be yes. Okay. If I remember, and I've got to double check with the people I know, but when you take a look at it, I mentioned that the Atlanteans, when they got into orbit, okay, they said they sent out a call for help. Okay, and they did get help. And if I remember correctly, I forget the name of the ship that came, but the ship that came to get us was a Corvanian ship. Okay, and again, came from way away, just far better travel time. Okay. How about we put a cap on that before I end up turning my throat inside out? What do you think? But the Atlanteans that were left behind ended up stranded and striving. They had to find a way to mesh to fit in with humans, to find a way to connect. And therefore, yes, you absolutely ended up with a handful of half-breed children that grew into much more advanced individuals, simply because of the increased intellect. Well, that's the funny thing there, YJ. When we're not talking about the Atlanteans per se being on Earth, we're talking about their descendants. The Atlanteans left. Okay, so yes, there are people here that have extremely high intellects, and they may not know their heritage because we are talking about heritage from way, way, way back down the line. I mean, you gotta think of it this way: if you've got a, let's say, an Atlantean father and a human mother, okay, in just one century, you're looking at 5 generations, okay, where it's one part Atlantean, 50% Atlantean, 50% human. Then you end up with a hybrid, so you're down to 25% Atlantean and 75% human. Okay, and the mathematics just gets insane because you're looking at 5 generations on average every 100 years. Okay, so at that point, let's just do the simple math here. We go 5 every 100 years, and you've got 10, so you're looking at 10,000, you're looking at 1,000 generations, so you're looking at 5,000 dilutions. Okay. And that would be exactly the point there, YJ. The people, I mean, you may be right that the people with that kind of a genetic background, okay, with that kind of a genetic background, with the higher intellect, with the higher curiosity streak, ending up in a university in a research facility would make absolutely total sense. The whole catch to it is that when we're looking at the Atlanteans, you've got 2 side groups. Okay, you've got the Atlanteans, the hybrids that stayed, the half-breeds that stayed and were raised in human society. Then you've got the group that became the intellectual leaders that taught the pagans and taught the druids how to connect with Earth. Then you've got the ones that went to the water and become the Whelan. Okay, and of course, along with the Whelan, that neat little subset of sirens came out. Okay, so, he absolutely did. The funny thing is, there are many people, and don't kid yourself, many people have an extremely high intellect, but they are strictly human. Okay, there is no extra bonus to it. Humans are not a stupid race. They have stupid behaviors in the current way of doing things. But humans have a staggering amount of potential. Albeit, in this case, very unrealized potential in many people's issues. Okay. So we are looking at people slowly coming to terms, and you're seeing it more and more with people coming out and going, I remember these past lives. Now, here's the thing that gets me with people remembering past lives. Okay, if you're remembering a past life from a higher society, why pull the same stupid maneuvers? Okay, this is Raven, I could not even begin to tell you. I can't tell you who the first president of Canada was, and that's only like 150 years ago. Okay, so remembering who the first ruler of Atlantis was, I have not got a clue. I know what I was doing in Atlantis that year, that lifetime. And I remember the aftermath of the sabotage. Where are we here? iVoice is just asking, does Neptune live in Atlantis? Now, I am presuming you're referring to the god Neptune and not the planet. I honestly don't know, Philip. It could have been. And now that you mention it, I believe his name, when that McDonald, would have been John A. But politics is not my strong suit. As a matter of fact, it's my aversion. Okay, I do my level best to avoid it like the plague. No, that doesn't work for me. I actually dove right into the plague and made an awful pile of money during the Black Death. I won't say the Black Death was fun, but boy, did I ever make a lot of headway. People, the reality of it is that we are at a crossroads in society right now. And we have to, well, we don't have to. You have the choice, as does everybody. Okay. You can continue down, you can continue down the same road that mankind has been going for decades, or we can start working, which is what I'd like to see happening in this chat room, especially. Okay. I see this quite regularly, that people are working to actually understand a better way, or more to the point, a less aggressive, less fear-based way of doing things. Unfortunately, the reality of it is we have a long way to go. Okay, there's an old saying that goes, those that don't know history are doomed to repeat it. But what people aren't told is those that dwell on history have exactly the same problem. Okay, now, the Atlanteans, the thing that you got to remember with the Atlanteans, okay, a lot of, because they were not, like, they were very creative. They were not extremely athletic. Okay, and this is why a lot of their clothing was more wispy, if you will. It was more like layer upon layer of your fine silks, your fine satins, and stuff that made that stuff look like crepe paper. Okay, they had some material that, well, frankly, it was. I'm just looking for the right name for it. They had developed a neat little process whereby you could literally make material out of connected molecules. And I don't mean the material that we look at. Like when you're looking at silk, okay, silk is made in a very simple fashion. Okay, but it is created, well, silk, let's face it, silkworms, and there's a number of other things that produce silk. There's actually a race of ants that also produce silk that humans may use. But the Atlanteans didn't. Okay. But their clothing was very free flowing. Usually it had to do with the fact that with it being free flowing, it was kind of like, especially over at that time on the physical world they were living on, the location they were living. Ultimately, Nathan, if I understand that product properly, the answer would be yes. Okay, you'd almost call it silly string, but yeah, ultimately, they made a lot of their clothing that way, and the reason for it was because when it was cold, the layers would keep them warm. When it was hot, simply moving created a little bit of a built-in fan, if you will. Yeah, well, that's, And I mean, the thing is, everything we need to live in the creature comforts can be made from the actual plants. Okay. The Atlanteans simply showed people how to connect with, some of the Atlanteans showed people how to connect with Mother Earth, with the plants, with the animals. And then you had the ones that turned back to the water, and they learned how to talk to the fish and and they taught others how to communicate. You know, the funny, this is why I say, like, you bring up Nathan, you brought up the term aerogel. And I don't always know the stuff by the same name you guys do. But then I haven't looked into any of it. This is why I say I go on a strictly memory-based setup. Which, yes, that does mean that I have a neat little possibility of misremembering, which is why I rely on things like corroboration from you guys and other people. Okay, some of my past lives have gotten absolutely bizarre results and absolutely bizarre recognition. I looked at it, went going, I don't want to be that person. You know, thanks so much, Nathan. Like I said, I will absolutely take a look at it when I get done this stream. You know, it's just that there is so much going on. You know, right now we are at an interesting crossroads. And the Atlanteans that are the Atlantean descendants that are here are fully aware of what's going on. Okay, not all of them, because let's face it, not every hybrid knows they're a hybrid. Not everybody knows their ancestry. I just happen to know from what okay. Apparently we can't speak anymore. From what my brother passed on, my ancestry dates all the way back into the time of the Druids. Oh, YJ, I always concern myself with that. Okay, YJ's just asking, do you ever worry that the aliens who speak to you aren't always giving you accurate information? Call me paranoid, but I ask that question of every single person I talk to. Okay, my other half included. Okay, now to be clear, I've talked to a number of different psychiatrists that have said, no, your mind is perfectly fine, meaning I don't fall into the category of being paranoid. Certainly cautious, certainly distrusting, but frankly, from my standpoint, I have to work with what feels right. Because is it possible some people will lie to me? Certainly. Okay, I'm absolutely, and I could quote names, but I'm not going to. I will tell you there are people. I have no answer for you there. Philip's just going, do we taste like pork to them? The best I can tell you is I wouldn't hold my breath on it. Okay. But that being said, Philip, there is no way I can give you a functional answer there. I'm going to be blunt here, Philip. Okay. Yes, tricksters lie. Yes, some aliens lie. And a staggering number of the humans that I've met lie. Okay, this is just the reality I've come to understand, so I don't even worry about that side of it anymore. I voices. The one race I don't completely avoid, but I am extremely cautious with, are the Talons. Okay, now the Talons are an ant-like race. Okay, I call them ant-like. They look like Terran ants, but they're a whole lot bigger. But they are also some of the most callous and vicious individuals I've run across. They will inflict pain for no other reason than to find out how much it takes to break something. Okay, I never did get along with them at all. You have the best thing I can tell you, Waylon. Okay. Oh, bonus. We'll get back to that in a second, Nathan. YJ, the best I can tell you there is trust your instincts. Okay. Yes, it is possible that it was a plant. The question you have to ask is, does it feel like it to you? Okay. That's the first thing that you have to realize is that, yes, there is that possibility, and you could certainly buy into the fear and go, they're lying to me and they're just setting me up. But ask yourself this, to what end? Okay. The only reason that I've seen people really do well at lying to people, and humans are far more adept at this than most of the other races, okay, is if you are trying to, get something from somebody in a position of power. Now, the thing you got to look at there, YJ, from your standpoint, is do you have anything of that much value and do you have that much of a closed mind, of a closed heart, that you wouldn't voluntarily help them? Because that's the primary drive behind lying to somebody. If you desire something from somebody that you do not feel will help you, then there are people that will lie to get that to happen. Okay. I could not agree with you anymore if I tried. I don't think there, Philip, that the majority of people, it's not just a question of they lie to everybody else. They lie to themselves. Okay. Now, I have made that mistake myself. Okay. For years, I figured there was a way I was somehow going to find a way to fit in on this planet. Came to the conclusion that's not going to happen. So I just turned around and went, I'm not going to worry about it anymore. Okay. From that standpoint, I look at it now going, okay, all these people essentially, whether we are dealing with human, animal, ancient race, off-worlder, elemental, it doesn't matter. You're all part of the same family. ASCH line experiment is the name of the psych experiment. I got bad news for you, Philip. I did my time in the my labs. I ain't going back to a lab. This is one of the big arguments I have with myself on how to get help. Because I got to go to a medical lab to medic sometime. I'm sure of it. But the reality is, do I trust them? Not as far as I can throw them. And rest assured, that's not that far. Yeah, well, unfortunately, and that can happen. Emotions, the reality is, YJ, emotions will scramble things. Okay. Now, I can look at it this way. I was bullied severely by humans. The Talons treated me like absolute garbage. The Srazazians, on the other hand, literally went out of their way to save my life. I can focus on the ones that have created the problem, or I can focus on the ones I got along with. My call, your call. Okay. I could go into all sorts of horror stories I've heard from people that trusted their instincts and got scammed. Now, this won't make you feel any better. Okay. It's a terrible thing having life ripped out from under you and having your belief completely decimated. Okay. Here's the problem, my voices. They're not. Okay. The off-worlders, the my labs are a human development, and it's a development that every race that I know of has gone through. It's a social development thing where they figure out, eventually a race will figure out this doesn't work. Okay, but it usually takes a number of decades, if not centuries. Okay, but aliens are, sometimes you get an individual getting involved to rescue one person or to guide one person out or to guide one person to let a few people out. Okay, but same idea as far as spirits go, because they're just people without a car. Okay, some individuals are already working on that department, but en masse, it is a necessary, in their eyes. I don't know if I want to say it's necessary, but it is a common road that virtually every race has gone through at one point in their civilization, many times in more than one. Well, apparently she wasn't ready to feel good. And the thing you got to remember, people, when you reach out to help somebody, okay, do it for the fact that you're trying to help. Do not base your intention. Do not base your intention on whether or not that person's going to work with it. This is why, like, I got a call the other day from somebody, and I'm not going to say who. Okay, but somebody dropped me a line the other day just to let me know, because I've been debating whether or not I'm actually impacting. And I've brought that up before, and no, I'm not asking at this point. Okay, but periodically I get a call, I get a contact, be it an email, a phone call, or what have you, letting me know that what I'm working on an individual level is helping some people. Okay, it is helping individuals. My concern, unfortunately, is I'm looking at a much bigger picture. Because unless more people turn things around, we are going to have one heck of a disaster here. And we are rapidly approaching, as a society, we are rapidly approaching a point of no return. And no, the Atlanteans are not coming back to eliminate this problem. Neither is the Galactic Consortium going to step in, nor the person that you consider God. Okay, mankind has dug themselves a massive crater, and it is up to mankind, it is up to us as a global community to turn this around and start making things work properly. Okay, the Atlanteans made the best of the situation they were placed in when Atlantis itself was launched. When the Atlantia was pushed back into orbit. Okay, the Atlanteans remaining behind did what they could to survive. I absolutely agree with you, YJ. I absolutely agree with you. But can it be mitigated by a fewer number of and I do mean a fewer number of people. I don't mean that we have to have somebody sitting in office, because in case you hadn't noticed, the people that are right now sitting in positions of functional power, okay, aren't taking care of the little people at all. And it's kind of like, if you're going to take care of your health, that's great. But if you don't take care of your legs, you're not going to be able to get very far anyway. Okay. It could be. I keep like, this is why I say, and why I tell people, Philip, if you're going to read or watch a negative article, back that up by watching or reading 2 positive ones. If you're going to post something negative or embarrassing, or something that nobody wants you to see, then post 2 that are actually positive. Okay, in this way we can accelerate the turn. It's still going to take time, Because remember, I don't know about you guys, but I'm thinking, well, we got 480 here. I don't think that's a very good ratio here. We got 480 divided by, I don't know if this will do that, 8 million, 2 billion equals, we have 0.0000685, okay, of the population, roughly, in this room. Well, not in this room, but subscribe to this channel. Okay, so we have a staggering amount of work to do. This is why I look at things, and this is why I said this is where things start. Okay, this funny little saying here. Okay, that's one I personally live by. Okay, it's also why every time I send a book out, every time somebody does buy a book, I make absolutely certain I include this. They call it a bookmark. I know in today's world it doesn't make much difference. But let me see if I can see where. Oh, you ain't going to see that way. There we go. Okay. That is on the bookmark I send. Okay. And of course, that on the other side is the title of one of the books I've written. But it really boils down to a mindset. Okay. And rest assured, the Atlanteans were no different. When we first got stuck here. Christine, how you doing? Glad you can join us. When we first got stuck here, there were a lot of the Alterans that were very lost, very upset that they couldn't ever go home. Okay. And if you think it was bad when we were down on Earth, when we got launched into orbit, okay, I mean, the first thing we did was clean up the mess, as it were. Because I'll tell you, you put 6 people up against the wall and then land on top of them, this is not a pleasant experience. This is known as being squishy in all the wrong places. But once we got over the shock of the ejection, right, then we set about trying to sort things out, and eventually we managed to get down to a little bit of a celebration that we actually survived, coupled along with the loss of literally thousands of our friends. Okay, and it was literally that massive loss that prompted us striving to make contact and eventually getting a hold of our neighbors, in order to get them to come and give us a lift, or more to the point, give us a boost. The important factor from your standpoint, there's a lot of stuff that's been written about the suspected disappearance of Atlantis. Okay, and I would love to look into what's been written, except for the fact that they all said it sank. Okay, everybody I've ever talked to, well, except 2 people. Okay, there were 2 people I talked to that have literally come right out and said, no, Atlantis didn't sink. Okay, don't know entirely what happened, but it didn't sink. Okay, well, I'll tell you, I remember what happened. Not a fun trip. If you like that kind of thing where you're all of a sudden going from zero to Mach 7 with no seatbelts and no gravity compensation, this is not enjoyable. Okay. I mean, it's pretty bad when you go to bury a friend of yours and you literally have to wash him off of you in order to bury him. Okay. This is one of those things that you just don't forget. And in my case, this is a memory from 10,000 years ago. Okay. So do I look at the world and go, yeah, it's a little bit different? Certainly. Am I frustrated with the way it's going? You bet. But do I still feel it is possible to turn it around? I absolutely do. But it's going to take a staggering amount of work. And that's where you guys come in. Okay. You just have to remember. You just have to remember that when you're looking at the way the world is, okay. Where are we here? I've heard Brazil and a place in Spain speculating. Well, that's just it. Brazil, I can tell you, Atlantis it had the satellite city in it. Okay. And Spain would not be a shock. Okay, because there were Atlanteans all over northwestern Europe. Okay. Because that's just how it spread out. Once we realized that we could not get back off the ground temporarily, we didn't know how long we were going to be. It was like, okay, let's make the best of the mess we've got. Okay. And then I was talking to somebody just yesterday about a communication link between the United States and Egypt that's got nothing to do with modern computers or modern politics. Okay, it was set in motion literally centuries ago. Okay, so there's a lot going on, and you're very aware that you're very correct, guys, where there is an awakening happening. Okay, but before we go any further on that little note, it's not. Where are we here? Nope. It was actually far more sophisticated. Okay, telegraph. The closest I can come there, Philip, would be a radionic photonic telegraph, aka broadcast pulse. Okay, without that fine little hard wire, there was no wire connecting the two continents. Matter of fact, there is a wire connecting them now. Okay, but no, it was literally it was more a crystalline computer connection. Okay, one day I'll remember how to align it properly. I've got the picture in my head. That's the easy part. Okay, but getting the right crystals, getting the right cut on them is the neat part, because crystals grow in a 6-sided configuration, and the crystals they used were cut to a 7-side. Okay, I am no gemologist, so I'm not about to even attempt it. I couldn't cut one. I could break it into a whole pile of fragments. And one day, when I've got the money, I may get around to getting one built. To getting the crystals built properly for it. But I'm not holding my breath on it. Oh, yeah, Nathan, I have. Problem. I am really good with a stick man that fell down a staircase, landed in a carburetor. Okay. Artwork for me is not I have done some work where I took a picture and blew it and freehand blew it up. Okay. Which I'm, functionally satisfied with. But drawing what I see up here doesn't happen well. This is why I spent so long looking for artists that could actually do something of reasonable justice. Okay. So that's where that is. I've tried sketching things out, and absolute miserable, in my opinion, absolutely miserable results. Okay. The other thing I have also tried to do, and once in a while I'll get it. Okay, once in a while I will actually remember a name. Okay. Where is it? This little chap. Until I saw this guy, and this is where things get really screwy. Okay. I've got images in my head that I have problems trying to put together. And then I come across something like this little figure that twigs a memory that you would not believe. Okay. Yes, it's a figure from the D&D collections. Okay, but this also brought back a whole pile of memories of other things I remember dealing with. That will take some doing. I mean, I don't have a problem with the trying part of it. Okay. But I will tell you, it's complicated. I do the one thing, and I will be giving a description. Something else that I've actually got it in the book. In Races of the Worlds, there is a piece of technology called the Mercalcan Amplinet. Okay, do I have the schematics and the specs up here? You bet. Will I ever give them to anybody? Not a prayer. Because the amount of damage this particular tool can do is just incalculable. Okay, I know what I'm looking for. I know what I've got to get in order to get it all sorted around. And until I have built one and tested on me, there is no way I'm letting anybody in on the specs. Okay. I got information from one Terran scientist to cross-reference something, to explain something I'd been told. Okay. About what I needed to have in order to build this thing. But did I give him the information that I required as far as the rest of it? No. And there's a reason for it. This is why I say, when people talk about when are we getting full disclosure, when will the government come forward and say, we really have aliens? Well, picture this. Now, this is simply representative. Okay. Picture this as a human. Okay, as a normal-sized human. Picture this as real scale. Now, can you picture this walking down Main Street and you not being worried about it? That's just the reality that we're dealing with. And that's the thing. Because if I align this thing wrong, when I go to build it, if I align it wrong, I kid you not, it'll scramble the brain. Okay. And unlike the people in my lab, I'm really not interested in seeing somebody's brain scrambled and poured out of their ears. There are things out there, like I said, when you take a look at the Atlantean world, okay, at where they came from and what they brought with them, remarkable architecture, okay, beautiful people, but they were not combat oriented, and they certainly weren't prepared for the rebellion that happened, or for the attempted, I shouldn't say rebellion, I should say the attempted subterfuge. Instead, the people, virtually to a man, the people involved in that did not survive. Something to do with being way too cocky and way too close to the explosion. Of course, I don't think they were expecting an explosion. Where are we here? Right there. So the Atlantean, in my time when I was there on Atlantis, we spent a lot of time perfecting. Like, talk about a group of stuck in the mud individuals. We were all extremely focused on absolute perfect alignment. In other words, if you were building something, make absolutely certain that it was put together. The answer to that there, Philip, I would be inclined to say it's a pretty good bet. Philip's just asking, are the Atlanteans still here, interested in serious relationships? Like I said, as far as I'm aware, there are no pure-blooded Atlanteans left. I'm wondering if I've actually got that information sitting there. Let me just double check. Nope, gotta take a look at that. That's one of those pieces of information, but that's not until book 2, so it's going to have to wait. Okay. Yeah, I look up on top because, frankly, I can read it. Yeah. Yeah, it's fine, Nathan. If you drink too much coffee, your brain will go fuzzy anyway. Of course, same thing happens if you drink too much sugar. But that's okay. As soon as I'm done this, I will go out and get something non-sugar to eat. That was just about bad. I just about said non-sugar, like I'll go get ice cream and caramel. I'm thinking that's probably pretty much sugar. Okay, but there are a lot of possibilities that are still available. And it's up to us as a society to start making the transition. And that is done by overloading the positive side of the stuff you're consuming and minimizing the negative. I'm referring to intellectual consumption. Okay. Interesting, possibly. But I hate to tell you this. If you take a look at that ratio, this person isn't 9 feet tall. If you take this as a 6-footer, okay, you're looking at somebody closer to 30. Okay. And let's face it, it's one thing to get slapped on the back when you're physically built. But that said, guys, thank you so much for joining us there, Henry. But you are right. We are hitting the 2-hour mark here. So we are going to look at shutting this down. And with that in mind, if you like the stream, do give us a thumbs up. Do subscribe to the channel and share the daylights out of it. And before I let you go here, well, you're free to go anyway. Tomorrow, we will be dealing with walk-ins, okay, as in a swap of souls. And I will explain that tomorrow, okay. And then on Thursday, I won't be here, but on Friday, we're going to be looking at orbs. Okay, what they are, where they came from, how things deal, that sort of thing. Okay, now with that in mind, people, I'm going to call it a night. Thank you so much for sharing your time with me. I really do appreciate it. I look forward to talking to you again in the near future. Until then, take care of yourselves and each other, and for pity's sakes, stay positive.